there. And same in Zoom. If you just jumped in, I'm going to go ahead and get started here, officially kick this off, and welcome all of you to today's session. This, as I mentioned to you a few moments ago, is what we call a executive briefing format, which means that we are going to cover one topic today in 45 minutes or less. And the idea is to get to the heart of that matter and then get you out for your next meeting with a few minutes to spare. So today I am going to be joined, or I am joined by Mike Robinson. I'm going to bring him up on the screen here in just a moment, from Summit Direct Mail. And I want to make sure that you connect with Mike and that you connect with me. So I'm going to ask the Mindfire team to drop our LinkedIn URLs there in the chat, wherever you might be listening to us or watching us from right now, because Mike is a wealth of knowledge, and I want to make sure you connect with him. And if these topics and these concepts that we're talking about here in these sessions are of value to you, make sure to connect with me. LinkedIn is a good spot where we let you know about these things and we keep you apprised of what's going on. So I think today's session is super important for many people here. The Supreme Court of the United States made a decision a few years back that's dramatically impacting how sales tax is collected and the responsibilities that many of you have. The court's ruling is in something called South Dakota versus Wayfair. And in a nutshell, and we're going to get into the more nitty-gritty details here in just a moment, but what this decision does is allow states to require that sellers collect and remit sales tax based on the establishment of what's called an economic nexus. And we're going to define these terms here in just a moment, which does away with the previous physical presence test. And if these things are like, you know, what the heck are you talking about, Dave? Mike is going to help us understand all of these, but that's a big change. And so what I've done to help you get the insights that you need is I've looked through all of your questions as you registered for this event. I saw many questions coming in. And I'm going to pull those top questions for Mike and understand how he is leading his print company through these changes. Now, I have to make the caveat here. Mike is not a CPA. Mike is not an attorney, but he's a practitioner leading his print company through this. He's paying lots of money to get this thing done in his organization, and I think it's going to be useful to all of you. So I have a question for you, and then I'm going to introduce Mike. Here's what I know. I want to know from all of you, whether you're in Zoom, LinkedIn, or on Facebook. Where do you stand on Wayfair? Is this your first time hearing about it? Maybe you know about it, but haven't done anything yet. Or perhaps you're already implementing some of these things into your business. Or perhaps you're ready to rock. You're already doing everything that you need to do. Tell us in the chat. I want to know where you are. So I see Kent saying this is his first time hearing about it. Okay, that's not uncommon, Kent. Thank you. I see Sherry saying implementing. I saw somebody say Wayfair is old news. Melissa says it's news to me. Jean or Jean is saying we're implementing a solution. Let me know over there on LinkedIn. And Mike, watch those as they come in. Just try to get a sense, Mike Robinson, for where people stand here. It's interesting to see as we talk to thousands of organizations, hundreds of print companies. There's quite a variety of preparedness and readiness and insight on this topic. So I want to know where you are in understanding the impact on your organization. Drop that into the chat. And so now what I want to do is I'm going to introduce Mike Robinson. I'm going to bring up the gallery view here so you can see him on the screen. So Mike, make sure to smile, look happy. Mike Robinson is from Summit Direct Mail and longtime partners, longtime friend. They're a high volume direct mail production company located in Dallas, Texas. So where are the Texas folks at? Make sure to give Mike some love there. Mike and his clients, large national insurance companies, nonprofit organizations, financial services, lots of clients in retail and publishing, and they do or have the capacity to do around 2 million direct mail pieces per day. And so from his vantage point in his organization, I think that what he can bring to the table here are some actionable insights that will help you understand how you might want to start taking a look at Wayfair here. And so without further ado, Mike, I want to welcome you to the event today. How are you doing, man?
I'm good. Thanks, Dave. Appreciate it.
Yeah. So first, let me give you a chance just to tell everybody a little bit about your company briefly. What do you do and who do you do it for? And give everyone just a brief overview of Summit.
Oh, you did a pretty good job up front. Yeah, we've been around since 2003. We're a printer, mailer in Dallas, Texas. Started out as just a high volume printer, and now we've gone into the variable digital format. So like you said, we can do quite a few million pieces a day. Nonprofit, financial service, mortgage, personal loans, retail, etc. I think our key is the ability to tie direct mail to digital, obviously utilizing your platforms. But it's a crazy time right now. So we've been fortunate due to the pandemic. We're still blowing and going and doing well. So can't complain.
Good, man. That's good to hear. So let's get right into the heart of the matter here. And my first question for you, Mike, because I see there's a lot of people here who say, hey, this is news to me. I want you to explain this to me like I'm 5 years old. What is Wayfair?
Basically, in a nutshell, and you started saying it earlier, was if you had a presence in a state. Well, first, let me take a step back. Again, you're correct. I'm not an attorney. I'm not a sales tax professional, CPA. I'm still learning things every day, and unfortunately, things are changing every day, and they're making new decisions. But basically, originally Wayfair, or excuse me, before Wayfair, is if you had a physical location in that state, you were required to pay sales tax. Now it is, and some of this, I think some people might disagree. Everybody has opinions on how things go, but this is how we're going to move forward. Now, due to the Wayfair Act, if you do a certain volume of business in a specific state, you're required now to remit sales tax in that state. Most of them are around $100,000. So if you're doing more than $100,000 in that state, you need to register in that state and start collecting and remitting sales tax.
And so when did this happen? And when did you start to actually take some steps towards addressing this?
It happened in 2018, and we're in the process of doing it still. We thought we were going to have it complete by February, but more and more things are coming into play. You can't do it this way. You can do it this way. So that's why I say, we've got a tax consultant on the that we're paying. We've got attorneys, and we have. I saw somebody mention Avalara. We haven't gone down the Avalara route. We're actually using Thomson Reuters. So we've got 3 different groups that we're working with to get this thing rectified and set up in our system. It's just extremely difficult based on how we do our billing and invoicing.
So one of the questions that came in advance of the session, and I want to make sure that it's really clear for everybody. The question was, in light of Wayfair, then, is my company subject to sales tax in the state that we're mailing into? How would I know if this is going to impact me?
Again, the clarification of me not being an actual expert, but basically, from what we're being told, is if you actually mail in a specific state and you were doing more than $100,000 worth of billing. Now we take postage out. Again, there's ways, depending on how you bill your customer. We bill them individually by service. So postage is separate, printing is separate, data processing is separate, letter shop is separate, binders is a separate line item invoice. And the way we're doing it is if we're mailing into that state, and again, it depends on the state, but majority of the states charge for print and data processing, sales tax. And then there's a handful of states that charge for the full mailing services, et cetera. So obviously you need to reach out to your sales tax professional and ask them, hey, here's what we do. So you're going to have an idea of what kind of volume you're doing in specific states. And again, that's assuming that you're not selling to resellers who also could submit a resale certificate, so you would not have to charge sales tax for that specific customer.
So one of the questions that came in advance was, is postage exempt? And if so, in which jurisdictions? What do you know about that?
Majority of them are yes. And it also depends on how you collect it. Again, from what we're being told, I think there's a handful of states that want to charge sales tax. Some of them don't. And when they want to charge sales tax, it depends on how the payment is being made. And so we're being told that if they wrote a check to Summit Direct Mail, for example, and said Summit Direct Mail and wrote it for postage, then yes. If you fund your own postage account or you write a check to the USPS, then that should avoid, I think there's 4 or 5 states, and I don't have those handily ready, but there's 4 or 5 states that are trying to collect sales tax if payment is remitted not to the USPS, but to your company, and then you then remit to the postal service.
Mike, a question from David that came in. David said, this sounds like a reporting nightmare for my small business. Most of our customers are in state, but we do ship some orders out of state. Where do we start? How do you handle the administration of this?
It's difficult. We're going to have to hire some people. We have obviously our controller, CFO, with myself. We're at least getting it set up, but it's extremely difficult because I think there's 14,000 taxing jurisdictions in the country, and so each one of them has a different obviously sales tax rate. So again, that's why we're using Thomson Reuters, where we're actually going to be submitting data to them, and they're going to come back and give me sales tax per zip code.
So are you currently doing this with your customers? Are you assessing, your prior liability that might have accrued? Kind of where are you in that process?
Yeah, we're doing that. And currently, obviously, we haven't implemented it. We're hoping to have it implemented by June 1st. So we're going through and making sure, basically dotting our I's, crossing our T's, making sure all of our billing is done correctly and line itemed out correctly. Because for example, there's a lot of people that just charge a single price. Hey, I'm going to charge you 50 cents a piece all in. If you're doing things like that, then you're going to be potentially taxed on all of that. So we're actually going through some of our customers that we have done that to and breaking it out. So now we're going back to them saying, hey guys, we're going to charge you $1, still charging you $1, but you're going to get line items now. So we're not taxing you for things that we shouldn't tax you.
So your invoices will now go from $1, just the fictitious example, $1 all in covers everything, to now needing to detail and line item how much is postage, how much is bindery, how much is data processing. Am I hearing you correctly?
That's correct. And typically we'll do it as two separate, I say invoices, not really an invoice. Invoice would be for the service, and then a postage request. So we'll send out a postage request and say, hey, you owe us 25 cents, send us right to the USPS or fund your postal account for 25 cents. That leaves 75 cents for services, and here are the services, printing, data processing, letter shop, bindery, etc. And the reason why we do that is some states charge for printing and data processing. Some actually charge for all. So you don't want to overcharge somebody tax based on the service that we're providing.
So folks, I see your questions coming in here in Zoom and on LinkedIn. Keep those coming in. I want to get through a few of the key issues here with Mike, and then I will try to get to as many of your questions in real time as possible. Mike, so when you were talking about how you line item the various aspects of what you're providing your client, a question came in from Tyler around how does this decision impact, say, digital ads that you might be running and charging your client for, or digital services like, for example, emails that you're doing in conjunction with the direct mail? How does that play out?
Good question. I don't have a full answer on that, and we're still going. Like I said, there's something that's changing every day, and so different states request different things. That's the crazy part. And again, that's why we've enlisted somebody like an Avalara or Thomson Reuters, is if we classify the buckets that we have, they then, based on their expertise and how we work with our consultants, can say, yes, that's taxable. No, that's not taxable. I haven't even gone down the road of digital. We do some, but that's probably one of the last things on my list. My bigger concern is what we do every day is for the high volume email. But again,
so a question that, yeah, go ahead, Mike.
Again, it goes back to, and I hate to keep saying this, but I'm an expert only because of the experts I'm talking to or close to getting that way. So they're going to have to tell you, yes, that is, because I've talked to multiple people and I get different answers from different people. So we're sometimes having to take the best guess and saying, you know what, this guy said this guy said this. Here's how we're going to do it.
So the decision was in 2018. Mm-hmm. Are you looking at this from the perspective of taxes might be due for 2019, 2020?
It could be. I mean, again, it just depends on your business and what you guys choose to do and go back and how are you going to handle that. the bigger concern we have is getting it taken care of first. Let's get where we're at now and start getting that taken care of, and then going back and working on, what is in the past.
Got it. Question came in here from Chris before the session, and I won't use Chris's last name since it's a common name, but he says, look, my company's known about this for over a year, maybe a year and a half now, and we haven't done anything about it. Why haven't we been mandated to do this yet? What's your thought on that?
I don't know. I think it's a good question. I think each state is doing it their own way. I think it's a resource issue with COVID. And I do think they are going to start. I talked to a guy yesterday, and he received some letters from, I think it was Minnesota or Michigan or something up in the north, saying that that they think that he might owe sales tax. I think it's going to start becoming more prevalent with COVID and the lack of revenue coming in. I think these states are looking for anything they can to get additional revenue. So wouldn't be surprised. I mean, you might not ever hear from them. It just depends on, you want to go to Vegas and throw the dice, but it is coming, and it's just a matter of how you're going to handle it. And, and I think all the states are going to eventually start pushing this and pushing it hard. I just don't think they have the resources right now.
So Wendy was saying, hey, to pay sales tax in a state, you have to register in that state, right? How is that going to work, or what's your perspective on how that's going to work if you do occasional business in that location?
Again, it goes back to, talking to your team and finding out what your best solution is for you. But for us, we picked a number of the states that we feel that we've hit that nexus in, and that's what we're working on to remit. And then you got to go in, and we actually have one of our consultants are registering us in all our states.
And so, Mike,
once you feel you've reached that, after talking to your tax consultant or your attorney, once you feel that you've reached or will reach that threshold, then yeah, you need to go in and either you guys do it or have somebody do it on your behalf.
So, Mike, as you're thinking about doing this and as you're taking steps in your organization to make this come to fruition, Andre is asking, how have you automated the tax collection process and then the payment to the states where that money needs to go? Is there a way that you've automated that into your invoicing process, or are you still in the works?
I'm still in the works. It's difficult because, again, you're being taxed on, for example, let's just take print. You're being taxed on print, and then you've got potential. If you mail nationwide, you could have to 14,000 taxing jurisdictions, and there's 31 or 41,000 zip codes. So we haven't even come close to automating it, especially if you've got multiple kits going to multiple zip codes, which is different price points. We haven't found a way to automate it. We do have a ERP system that handles invoicing, and we're trying to figure out how to make that work. And then they're actually going to submit the data to Thomson Reuters, who will then come back and give us some numbers.
Do you mind sharing the ERP that you use?
It's called Print Reach, which usually called Midnight or Mail Shop. And they're actually working with us now to figure out the best way to implement it.
And a common question that came in, and I'm going to summarize it as concisely as possible. I think it's probably on everyone's mind here. It's a two-part question. What happens, in your view, your understanding, what happens to businesses that do not comply with this, and who is held accountable?
Again, ultimately, it's my responsibility to collect the sales tax, but at the end of the day, if I can't do it or won't do it or whatever, they're going to eventually come back to the end user. But initially, the provider is the one responsible for collecting the tax. We're responsible for collecting it and remitting it.
So when you say they're going to go to your end customer, that's another question that came in a lot. How are you talking to your customers about this?
And I don't know for sure they're going to do that, but I'm just guessing. Just letting them know, hey, there's a new thing out here. It's called that. That's actually a difficult decision right now for us. We're telling all of our customers about it, but again, not everybody in our industry is going to do it, or not everybody's going to do it. So if everybody doesn't do it, or they all do it, great. If they don't do it, there's going to be some issues because, again, they're going to be saying, well, I'm going to move to a different provider because they're not going to charge me sales tax. well, that's great. You're just kicking the can down the road, in my opinion, because you might get lucky. Again, you might get lucky and they'll never come to you, or you might not. And now you've got this big tax liability because you decided to go somewhere else.
So Ryan was saying, so Mike, can clients or the end users, your customers, report it as use tax instead of the printer collecting sales tax?
I do not know.
Okay.
I do not have that answer. I am not sure.
And so you're saying that Thomson Reuters is helping with all of these tax rules by state. Can you just clarify exactly how you're using Thomson Reuters?
So, like, again, we've got 3 different groups. We've got Thomson Reuters, we have a tax consultant group, and then we have a tax attorney. And so the tax attorney and the consultants are saying this is the best way to break it out. And so what we're using for Thomson Reuters is Thomson Reuters actually has the back end that has all the zip codes and all of the taxing rates. So we actually put this packet together. We then send it to Thomson Reuters. They look it up, and then based on our grid saying we're taxing, we're not taxing, or this is taxable, this is not taxable, they then submit all that, go up against the sales tax versus zip code count, and come back with a tax rate based on every record that was sent.
So Ram is asking, do you know if commingle facilities, Mike, that folks here might use are taxable then under this law?
That's one of the questions we still have. I don't know how that's going to work.
Okay, so you've looked into that, but you don't have a definitive position on that.
I do not have an idea how that's going to work.
Okay. Randy's asking, Mike, I'm in a state that does not currently have a sales tax. So with Wayfair, if I print for a local customer but ship the order to one of my customers' offices in another state, will that require a tax in your view?
I would think so. Again, you got to talk to your tax professional, but I would think so because you're doing business in that state, assuming you go over that threshold. You go over that threshold. My view is, and how I would handle it is, I would charge, if I'm already registered to collect sales tax, I would charge that client sales for the stuff that's going into that state and the taxable items that are listed on the invoice.
Question for Michael here, and it's interesting because I know you deal with 501c3s and nonprofits and organizations of that nature. What if your customer is tax exempt, like a school or a 501c3? Have you run into that?
Yeah, there's paperwork you submit. So they can actually submit either nonprofit or reseller, and then we won't charge them tax. However, and I don't know the states, but there's a few states that I don't want to say they don't recognize nonprofits, but they still tax nonprofits in some of their marketing materials. So again,
and
you get with your group and they'll tell you, hey, these nonprofit is good for all these states, but these states, even though you have nonprofit taxes, still want to collect sales.
And so, Mike, you kind of articulated how you're breaking your invoices down into multiple line items. Jim is asking a question just to clarify there. Which portions, in your view, Mike, and again with the caveat that folks need to check with their own counsel on this, but which of those line items, if you can just go one by one, are you seeing as taxable?
Majority of them are data processing and print, and then the mailing services are going to be state by state basis. I know Hawaii. I'm pretty sure Hawaii collects on all, but print and data processing are the 2 key ones.
Okay. Jim, let us know if that answers your question. And then a question here from Greg that just came in, Mike. I know the name of the organization you're working with, but if you're comfortable sharing the consulting group, the teams that you're working with here, are you comfortable sharing their names so that if folks want to follow up with them, they can?
Sure. One is called, and Thomson Reuters recommended a company called DS Tax. And then the attorney firm is, I don't know if it's Ackerman or Ackerman, but they're out of New York City.
Okay. So maybe if you can, if Mackenzie and Mike Tricuzio, if you can put that in the chat there for everyone, I'm sure others are going to be asking for that. Folks, I can see your questions coming in. Let me see if anything on LinkedIn. If you have any questions over there on LinkedIn land or Facebook, please type those in. And then Mindfire team, if you can paste those into the chat here for me in Zoom. I want to make sure I get to all of the questions. A question here from Gene. Hopefully I'm pronouncing Gene, your name correctly. Sometimes I mangle them. Mike, are you going to register then in all or many states as soon as you're implemented here? Is that your plan?
Yeah, we've already started the process of registering, and once we've registered, we won't be all. I say 51 because there's DC, but we're not registering all 51, but it'll be a majority of them. And then once we do hit that financial nexus, then we'll continue to register in all the others. And it's a yearly financial nexus. So if you're doing, there's some that are 250, but most of them are 100. So at the point where I do $100,000 worth of revenue in that state, then I'd register.
Then you register. Okay. And Craig is asking then, Mike, have you run into a situation where more than one jurisdiction claims to have taxing authority on the same event? So as an example, the client location is in Texas, you're in Texas, but you're mailing into other states. Texas is going to claim taxes on the entire job, and the other states also want their piece. Have you run into anything like that?
Yeah. And what we've done is we're in Texas. So there's some things that they want to charge all, for the service. And so we're just going to do that, but then everything else will go to each specific state. And at that point in time, at least I know I'm paying it. And then it'll be a mess. But if it does come back the other way, then I can deal with it. Look, I've already paid it, but now trying to pull it from one to go to the other, that's going to be a challenge. But at least we're paying it.
Got it. Bob is asking a question here. So what if you're selling to an agency or another reseller of some sort? The sales tax in Bob's view here would not be applicable. Is that correct? Is that your understanding?
Yeah, if it's a reseller, as long as we get a resale certificate for the state that they're doing the business in, then I'm not going to charge them sales tax. And I know there are streamlined tax forms where you can fill out one resale certificate that can work for multiple states. And then I know there are states that say, hey, if you have a Texas resale certificate, we'll honor it. And again, it's a crazy list. So, but yeah, you're correct. It's if they're a reseller and they give you the proper documentation, you shouldn't have to collect it.
Okay. Paul is saying, Mike, if you can help clarify this, is the jurisdiction based on the customer's billing location or the address of the recipient of that direct mail piece?
How we are doing it is if I mail 1 million pieces to 1 million different zip codes, or not 1 million, 40,000 zip codes, we are basically charging sales tax at a zip code level for the recipient.
Can you say that again, just a little bit louder? Because
I am charging, we will be implementing tax. How I'm going to do it is we are going to, let's say I mail 100,000 pieces. I'm going to have a chart with all 100,000 zip codes, and it's going to then get submitted. So I'm going to be charging sales tax at the zip code level for that piece.
Okay, everyone, you hear that? Let me know if you have any questions there in the chat. So Michael is asking a question. It's in line with what you just talked about here, Mike. Is it just the state, or does it also break down to city level in terms of the tax rate here?
Well, depending on the zip code, all zip codes, not all, most zip codes have all different tax rates. So if I've got 2,000 records into this specific zip code, obviously the city, New York City, for example, I'm sure it's a higher rate than where I'm here in Dallas. Mine, I think, is 8.25%. I would guess that New York City is probably over 9%. So based on the city, you're going to get charged that rate.
And Mike, if you can just loudly, because when you get a little quieter, it's harder to hear you. Loudly again, just state the name of the firms that you mentioned a second ago that you're working with.
Thomson Reuters, DS Tax, and a company called attorney firm called Ackerman out of New York City.
Ackerman, is that correct?
Ackerman or Ackerman, I honestly don't know. It's AKER.
Okay, somebody Google it and let's make sure we got the right one. Peter's clarifying again that the sales tax is less postage cost, correct?
It is less postage cost if you are doing it in line item and doing it properly. If it's all in our opinion, my opinion, you're going to get taxed on all of it. But if you line item it out and request postage as a separate request, not an invoice, then yes, in my opinion.
Yep. And your understanding. And
yep.
I see somebody here saying, so you might want to clarify that it's destination-based tax. And that is what you're saying, correct, Mike?
Yep.
Okay. Amy is asking here, I see Amy's question in Zoom. Does resale tax exemption come into play at all here?
Yeah, that's that resale certificate that we would use, that we would get from anybody, any customer agency that is going to be collecting tax themselves. We would need that tax exempt certificate.
Okay. Andrew says, Mike, our company is at a very similar spot in this process, and we've noticed that many of our peers are still in complete denial that they need to do something about this incredibly painful process. So the question is for you, Mike, what made you, what convinced you that you need to pull the trigger? And
Actually,
do you get the impression that our industry is starting to come around to the realization that this is necessary?
well, good question, Andrew. And
Yeah.
I know Andrew, and one of the reasons why we're actually doing it is because of Andrew. So we know they're a very similar company as ours, and we work with them, and we're on some organizations together. So yeah, basically, Andrew, after all of our discussions with you guys and other groups, yeah, that's what made us decide to do it. And I do think, obviously, there are some that are still not going to do it. They've said they're not going to collect. So it kind of puts, you and I in a spot, but, as long as we do what we need to do, then, it is what it is.
So I see that Alicia, thank you. Hey, Alicia, it's good to see you. And a few others have done the sleuthing to find the attorney that you mentioned, the law group, as well as obviously Thomson Reuters. So Mindfire team, if you can take those URLs, thank you, Alicia, for finding that. And let's just distribute those so that everybody has them. That would be fantastic. Matt is saying here, you might want to clarify if all exempt taxes count towards the sales level to qualify for collecting tax. Let's start with that piece first. Do you understand what he's saying there, Mike?
Yeah. So the threshold is, and again, and Andrew, he might have a different, because I know Andrew's working on it as well, but he might have a different opinion. But our definition is we're going to be collecting tax on what is considered taxable in that state. So if it's $1 and 50 cents of it is rent, that's what I'm going to assume is a taxable, is what I'm going to use for that tax base for accounting to my $100,000.
Alicia is trying to find for you, Mike, DS Tax. What state are they in?
I think they're in Chicago.
In Chicago, Illinois. All right. Thank you. So, Alicia, if you find them, that would be fantastic. Mark is saying, is a transaction relative to the transaction count that you mentioned, Mike, is that one piece of mail? Is that a transaction?
Yes, that in our opinion and our understanding it would be. And again, there's also transaction-based things as well. Some of the states have transaction as well as dollar amounts. But yeah, that's how we're looking at it.
Mike, I'm seeing a few requests for you to speak a little bit more loudly. So just pretend like this is one of the calls where you're angry at me.
Or Ben.
Yeah, or Ben. Yeah. So
Yeah.
Project a little bit so everyone can hear you. They're on the edge of their seats.
We are looking at it at a individual level, at each record count and that dollar amount for that specific record.
So Mark is asking here, are you saying then that you will report and pay state, county, city, borough separately and be responsible for running all of that?
How I'm going to answer that is I've got a tax consulting group that told us how to collect it. We are going to collect it and they're actually going to remit it for us. I'm not sure how they're going to do it. I really probably don't want to know because it's probably a pile of coat hangers, but yes, we are collecting tax for what we will be collecting tax for what we feel is owed, and they are going to remit it to the proper group, whether it's state, county, federal, state, county, local, whatever. Yes. And I think in some states like Texas, we just have to remit it to one location and they distribute to where it needs to go.
So question here from Craig, and I know that I can almost see Craig's face as he's asking this. I'm talking about Craig C here. He's saying, hold on, time out. So you're saying that one job that mails all over the nation could conceivably have sales tax due in thousands of jurisdictions?
Yeah, that's correct. I mean, so
mic drop right there.
How we're going to do it is, again, if we have 100,000 pieces, and let's say we're mailing one record to each zip code, they're not zip, there's 31,000. So we're mailing to those specific zip codes. And yes, we are actually submitting a data file by zip code and then applying the appropriate tax to that zip code.
Brett is asking, and I think you touched on this briefly, Mike, but wondering if there's any software that can handle this. For example, does QuickBooks handle this for us? Do you know?
Not that I'm aware of. I mean, I'm sure there's some integrations with that, but like I said, with PrintReach, for example, we've got an invoicing billing system and we generate our invoices. We are working with them to be able to load that data with all the zip codes in it. They're then going to grab it, submit it to Thomson Reuters, who's then going to calculate the tax, push that tax back to me so I can show it on my invoice. I then collect it, and then quarterly, monthly, however our consultants deem fit, they're then going to take that data and submit the reports along with payment.
So Gene, am I pronouncing your name correctly, Gene? Please forgive me if I'm mangling your name. But Gene, I believe that's how I pronounce it. Yeah? Okay, great. So Gene has a multi-part question here, Mike. So I'm going to give you each part. And if you can just give me an answer on each. Does Summit provide fulfillment services?
We do.
You're smiling.
Because I have a feeling I know where it's going, and I don't know the answer. I don't know what's going to be considered taxable or not. We're still going through that one.
So the next part of the question is, if you print, bill the customer, then store and fulfill on the customer's instructions, would you consider the printing taxable in the state where you're located?
That's one of the bigger challenges that we have, whether it's fulfillment or not. So if I print, and as a printer, volume drives price, right? So if I have a customer that's mailing 100,000 pieces of mail a month, right? And so the best efficiency is, hey, let me print 1 million envelopes, right? So I'm going to print 1 million envelopes and I'm going to warehouse and store those. How I think I would do it is, obviously I'm going to charge them for the 1 million envelopes. And then as they use it, then I'm going to have to charge them the sales tax for that amount of envelope that was used to that specific state. Does that make sense?
Yep.
I don't know because if I print 1 million envelopes, I have no idea where it's going, so I can't charge a sales tax rate on that. But once it's being used and put into the mail stream, then I know where that's going. And then even though they've already paid for the envelopes, then they're going to get on the invoice, they will get a tax rate for that envelope that they've already paid for.
So Ryan's asking you, Mike, in your service offering, are you selling to brokers and distributors as well?
I am.
You are? Okay.
And that's where it comes into play of a sales and resale certificate. So they should be responsible because in theory, if I sell it to you, Dave, you're going to mark it up. So I can't charge sales tax because I don't know what your markup is. So they're going to have to collect and remit sales tax after they bill their client.
So Jennifer, I think this is similar to the question you just dropped in here to Zoom. And so if you're watching on Facebook, if you're watching on LinkedIn, please drop your questions there. I can see them. My team is collecting them for me. But Jennifer is asking you, Mike, so assuming you require client payment before a mail drop, are you estimating mail service fees and taxes, or how will you handle that billing now? How do you reconcile that?
So typically we bill net 30. Even if we didn't, I don't bill the customer till I run the data. So once I run the data, I'm going to know, in order to figure out what your tax is, you got to know what your data is. And as well, same with the postage. So I can't give you a postage amount until I know what the data looks like. So I'm going to process that data before I do anything. And then at that point in time, I'm going to know what tax is going to be because we're going to have to submit it and get that data back.
I see a David Hunter here. David Hunter, are you the David Hunter I knew about 20 years ago, or is that a different David? David's saying, if you have an online store like Magento, there are plugins that will calculate taxes automatically based on zip code. Yeah, David, we're familiar with that, but does it solve this particular issue? Let us know, David. I don't know if you have any insight on that, Mike, Magento specifically.
No, at the end of the day, if that software is already, sounds like it's already integrated with some sort of sales tax engine that's coming up with the tax rates. So it sounds like that to me that system is applying the appropriate tax, and then customers paying it. The bigger challenge is not that piece; it's then being able to collect it all and remit it to all the areas that the tax was collected for.
And I mean, I would assume that the Magento situation would also have to be able to understand the mail file, who those pieces are going to in those destinations, right? So I'm not sure
Yeah,
that it
I
actually
don't know.
solves?
I'm not sure. I don't think it does. Now that I'm seeing what you're saying, yeah, there's no data file. So in theory, it sounds to me like they're probably just applying sales tax at the state that they're located in. Well, it sounds like to me.
So how are you handling this in a web to print scenario, Mike, where somebody goes onto a storefront online ordering portal and fulfills or orders and gets everything that they need themselves through the web? How are you handling it in that scenario?
We're implementing that as well. We don't do a ton of web to print, but yeah, we are going to have to implement that as well. We're going to have to tie it back to data and then push it back to get a sales tax rate and come back.
Here's a question from Mark. Mark is saying, if I invoice a customer, and again, Mike, this is based on your view here. If I invoice a customer for a job and place all in a warehouse, they're paying for all pieces up front, and I charge taxes at that time. Then they ship over the course of several months. So do I need to charge tax on shipping to the location as I send them out on the customer's behalf?
Good question. I don't know the answer to that.
Okay.
I mean, I would, again, if you're charging them up front, you probably don't know who you're mailing to. So once you know who you're mailing to and bill for those services, you probably need to add on. I would think you'd have to add on the tax for the places that you mailed to.
Here's a good question. Christ or Christ? Again, forgive me if I'm mispronouncing your name here. I think this is something that, Mike, you've touched on, but I'll just ask you to clarify once more for everybody here. Christ or Christ is asking, some printers base tax on their own sales tax nexus footprint, right? We know that. Other printers base tax on the customer's sales tax nexus footprint. What's your understanding of the correct way to do this? This gets at the crux of the matter. So again, Mike, just once more, what is your understanding there?
So again, there are large mailers that already have footprints throughout the country, and I'm assuming they're collecting tax in the states that they're actually physically located in. For us, we are going to collect tax in every state that we're going to be mailing into, assuming we hit that financial net.
Okay. I see somebody saying this sounds like a damn nightmare. What's Mike's opinion?
Yep, it is. It's honestly, it's a pain in the ass. I mean, I'd love just to be able to have a flat remit tax. Actually, I'd love to have no tax, but if they are going to tax, there's got to be an easier way, because again, we're taxing 14,000 taxing jurisdictions, and I think there's 30 some odd thousand zip codes in the U.S. And then you've got to remit tax. Then you're going to have to remit tax. I'm going to have to pay a fee, and we're having to pay a fee to the consultant for every tax form or every tax form I have to actually submit.
So we're coming up on 3 minutes till the end of this executive briefing session. I have a few things I want to communicate to all of you. First of all, if you got value out of this, if you're finding yourself with new ideas and probably some concerns here, I want you to thank Mike in the chat. Whether you're in LinkedIn, in Facebook, and Zoom, give him some love. I want to know if you appreciate it and if you've had value out of this conversation. Let's see those coming in. Yeah, give Mike some thank you here, because he's a busy guy running a company there, and for him to take time with us is no small. Yeah, there we go. I see all the thank you coming in for you, Mike. That's awesome. Secondly, folks, is this a topic you want to learn more about? I saw some suggestions coming in saying, hey, what if we got a panel? Mike, maybe a legal point of view. Andrew, yeah.
I know Andrew, and I was going to say that, Andrew, if I've missed anything, or if you see that I said something wrong, or there's something that I missed that you think I need to add, let me know.
So maybe we'll
moving target.
Maybe we'll pull a panel of you, legal and tax expert, and maybe somebody from USPS or something. We've got contacts everywhere. Maybe we'll do a panel if that would be valuable to you. Let us know in the chat if that's something that would be helpful. Thirdly, Mindfire team, please drop my profile URL, Mike's LinkedIn, and also the book a call link there into the chat, Zoom, LinkedIn, and Facebook. Folks, if you want to connect with me, if you want to learn more about Mike, please take the opportunity to connect with him. My team's going to drop the URLs there in chat. And also, if you want to talk further with us, there's a link that the team will drop into the chat there. If you've got something on your mind, something that maybe we can help you with, something that Mike said that maybe gives you an idea of something we can do to help you, Mindfire, let us know. Fill in that little form, and we'll get on the phone and talk that through with you. If there's a service that perhaps Mike can provide you or something that Mike's company can do for you, fill in that form as well, and we'll get those routed over to Mike as soon as possible later on today. So my team is going to drop those into the chat. Mike, with maybe 60 seconds left, I'm going to give you an opportunity to say some final words here. Anything you want to say to everybody?
I appreciate you guys all jumping on. Well, I don't have all the answers. It sounds like I might have more answers than a lot of you. There are some people I guarantee on this call that know more than I do, and their probably opinions are different on how we handle it. But, at this point, I think we probably all should get together or have some sort of some kind of roundtable, like you said, Dave, to discuss, because we might be doing something wrong, or there might be a better way to skin this cat. I don't know. I just know it is a big pain in the ass. And if there's an easier way to do it, let me know. Like I said, I keep mentioning Andrew because I know Andrew is doing it alongside us. It's challenging. We've gone back and forth with them quite a bit. Hey, how are you handling this? What are you doing about this? It's a big challenge. And anybody out there understands anything better than we do, please speak up, because I'd love to make it a lot easier than it currently is.
So here's what I'll say to everybody who's still here. If you are, with Printing United, if you're with What They Think, if you're with AbTech, if you're with any industry organization and you want to collaborate on putting a session together with somebody like Mike and other experts who can weigh in on this important topic, it seems like there's significant interest. Reach out to me, reach out to my team. We'd love to collaborate with you on that. And with that, I want to keep to my promise. We're 1 minute behind. Thank you, everybody, for being here. Again, we really appreciate your time. Is this 45-minute session length, is this good for all of you? Let us know in the chat real quick. We want to make sure that we're delivering you value. That's our goal. So let me know in Facebook. Let me know in LinkedIn. Let me know here in Zoom. Do you like these 45-minute lengths? Is this good? The shorter, the better. I see somebody saying, just like my school classroom, not long enough, somebody says. All right, 45 minutes is perfect. 30 to 45 minutes is great. I hope this has been helpful for you. We're going to continue doing more of these. Connect with me, connect with Mike. Stay plugged into this community. We're here to help one another. Mindfire is here to help you as printers, as agencies, B2B, B2C brands. We're all about servicing you and helping you continue to tackle some of these tough challenges. Mike, it's like, as if the pandemic wasn't enough, as if COVID wasn't enough, the economy, all of this stuff. Now we have this crap to deal with, right? It's like, when does it end? But thank you all for being here. I appreciate all of you. You go ahead, Mike.
I was going to say, that's the concerning thing, is this is something that can affect all these businesses. If it's not done properly, that's why we all need to jump in. People might not be around in the future.
Yep. All right. Well, let's try to end on a positive note, folks. If you need any help, if you want to talk further, you know where to go. Thank you again, Mike, for all of your time. You're an incredible resource and asset to this community. We appreciate you, and John Barber and Ben Shank and everybody over there at Summit. And I want to thank you from the community. I can see there's a lot of love here for you today. And for all of you listening and watching, thank you again for your time. We appreciate you. We will be here when you need us, and look forward to seeing you again soon in one of these sessions. Thanks, everybody. Have a great weekend.